Saint Jean de Brébeuf was a French Jesuit missionary who traveled to New France in 1625. There he worked primarily with the Huron for the rest of his life, except for a few years in France from 1629 to 1633. He learned the language and culture, writing extensively about each to aid other missionaries. In 1649, Brébeuf and another missionary were captured when an Iroquois raid took over a Huron village. Together with Huron captives, the missionaries were ritually tortured and killed, being martyred on March 16, 1649. Brébeuf was beatified in 1925 and among 8 Jesuit missionaries canonized as saints in the Roman Catholic Church in 1930. Biography. Early years. Brébeuf was born the 25th of March 1593 in Condé-sur-Viac, Normandy, France. He joined the Society of Jesus in 1617 at the age of 24, spending the next 2 years under the direction of Lancelot Marin. Between 1619 and 1621, he was a teacher at the College of Rouen. Brébeuf was nearly expelled from the society when he contracted tuberculosis in 1620, a severe and usually fatal illness that prevented his studying and teaching for the traditional periods. His record as a student was not particularly distinguished, but Brébeuf was already beginning to show an aptitude for languages. Later in New France, he would teach Native American languages to missionaries and French traders. Brébeuf was ordained as a priest at Pontoise in February 1622. Missionary. After 3 years as steward at the College of Rouen, Brébeuf was chosen by the Provincial of France, Father Pierre Coton, to embark on the missions to New France. In June 1625, Brébeuf arrived in Quebec with Fathers Charles Lalemant and Edmond Massé, together with the lay brothers François Chartin and Gilbert Burel. For about 5 months Brébeuf lived with a tribe of Montagnais, who spoke an Algonquin language. He was later assigned in 1626 to the Huron with Father and Noueaqt. From then on Brébeuf worked mostly as a missionary to the Huron, who spoke an Iroquoian language. Brébeuf briefly took up residence with the Bear tribe at Tonché. Brébeuf met with no success in trying to convert them to Catholicism. He was summoned to Quebec because of the danger to which the entire colony was then exposed by the English. He reached Quebec on the 17th of July 1628 after an absence of 2 years. On the 19th of July 1629, Champlain surrendered, and the missionaries returned to France. In Rouen, Brébeuf served as a preacher and confessor, taking his final Jesuit vows in 1630. Between 1631 and 1633, Brébeuf worked at the College of Vieux in northern France as a steward, minister and confessor. He returned to New France in 1633, where he lived and worked for the rest of his life. Along with Antoine Daniel and Ambroise Davost, Brébeuf chose Ihonatiria as the center for missionary activity with the Huron. At the time, the Huron suffered epidemics of new Eurasian diseases contracted from the Europeans. The death rates were high, as they had no immunity to the diseases long endemic in Europe. They blamed the Europeans for the deaths, with none of the parties understanding the causes. Called Écone by the Hurons, Brébeuf was personally involved with teaching. His lengthy conversations with Huron friends left him with a good knowledge of the culture and spirituality. He learned the language and taught it to other missionaries and colonists. Fellow Jesuits such as Ray Journeau describe his ease and adaptability to the Huron way of life. His efforts to develop a complete ethnographic record of the Huron has been described as the longest and most ambitious piece of ethnographic description in all the Jesuit relations. Brébeuf tried to find parallels between the Huron religion and Christianity Christianity, to facilitate conversion of the Huron to the European religion. Brébeuf was known by the Huron for his apparent shamanistic skills, especially in rainmaking. Despite his efforts to learn the ways, he considered Huron spiritual beliefs to be undeveloped and foolish delusions. He was determined to convert them to Christianity. Brébeuf did not enjoy universal popularity with the Huron, as many believed he was a sorcerer. By 1640, nearly half the Huron had died of smallpox, and the losses disrupted the society. Many children and elders died. With the loved ones dying before their eyes, many Huron began to listen to the words of Jesuit missionaries who, unaffected by the disease, appeared to be men of great power. Brébeuf's progress as a missionary in achieving conversions was slow. Not until 1635 did some Huron agree to be baptized as Christians. He claimed to have made 14 converts as of 1635, and by the next year, he claimed 86. He wrote a detailed account in 1636 of the Huron Feast of the Dead, a mass reburial of remains of loved ones after a community moved the location of its village. It was accompanied by elaborate ritual and gift-giving. In the 1940s, an archaeological excavation was made at the site Brébeuf had described, confirming many of his observations. In 1638, Brébeuf turned over direction of the mission at St. Joseph I to Jerome Lalemant. He was called to become superior at his newly founded St. Joseph II. In 1640, after an unsuccessful mission into neutral nation territory, Brébeuf broke his collarbone. He was sent to Quebec to recover, and worked there as a mission procurator. He taught the Huron, acting as confessor and advisor to the Ursulines and religious hospitallers. On Sundays and feast days, he preached to French colonists. Linguistic work. The educational rigor of the Jesuit seminaries prepared missionaries to acquire native languages, but, as they had learned the classical and Romance languages, they likely had difficulty with the very different conventions of the New World indigenous languages. Brébeuf's study of the languages was also shaped by his religious training. Current Catholic theology tried to reconcile knowledge of world languages with accounts in the Bible of the Tower of Babel, as this was the basis of European history. This influence can be seen in his discussion of language in his accounts collected in the Jesuit Relations. Jean de Brébeuf had a remarkable facility with language, which was one of the reasons he was chosen for the Huron mission in 1626. Brébeuf is distinguished for his commitment to learning the Huron language. People with a strong positive attitude towards the language community often learn the language much more easily. Brébeuf was widely acknowledged to have best mastered the native oratory style, which used metaphor, circumlocution, and repetition. Learning the language was still onerous, and he wrote to warn other missionaries of the difficulties. To explain the low number of converts, Brébeuf noted that missionaries first had to master the Huron language. His commitment to this work demonstrates he understood that mutual intelligibility was vital for communicating complex and abstract religious ideas. He believed learning native languages was imperative for the Jesuit missions, but noted that it was so difficult a task that it consumed most of the priest's time. Brébeuf felt his primary goal in his early years in New France was to learn the language. With increasing proficiency in Wyandot, Brébeuf became optimistic about advancing his missionary goals. By understanding Huron religious beliefs and communicating Christian fundamentals, he could secure converts to Christianity. He realized the people would not give up all the traditional beliefs. Brébeuf worked tirelessly to record his findings for the benefit of other missionaries. He built on the work of Recollet priests, but significantly advanced the study, particularly in his representations of sounds. He discovered and reported the feature of compound words in Huron, which may have been his major linguistic contribution. This breakthrough had enormous consequences for further study, becoming the foundation for all subsequent Jesuit linguistic work. He translated Ledesma's Catechism from French into Huron, and arranged to have it printed. It was the first printed text in that language. He also compiled a dictionary of Huron words, emphasizing translation of religious phrases, such as from prayers and the Bible. Brébeuf is credited with composing the Huron Carol, Canada's oldest Christmas song, written around 1642. Brébeuf wrote the lyrics in the native language of the Huron-Wendat people. The song's melody is based on a traditional French folk song, Un jeune Puchel. Death. Brébeuf was killed at St. Ignace in Huron on March 16, 1649. He had been taken captive with Gabriel Lalemant when the Iroquois destroyed the Huron mission village at St. Louis. The Iroquois took the priest to the occupied village of Huron, where they subjected the missionaries and native converts to ritual torture before killing them. 3 priests had been killed in Mohawk country at Ossenanon in 1642 and 1646. Antoine Daniel had been killed in a similar Iroquois raid in 1648. Charles Garnier was killed by Iroquois in December 1649 in a Petun village, and Noel Charbonnel was also martyred that year in the conflict between the Mohawk and other tribes. The Jesuits considered the priest's martyrdom as proof that the mission to the Native Americans was blessed by God and would be successful. Throughout the torture, Brébeuf was reported to have been more concerned for the fate of the other Jesuits and of the captive native converts than for himself. As part of the ritual, the Iroquois drank his blood, as they wanted to absorb Brébeuf's courage in enduring the pain. The Iroquois mocked baptism by pouring boiling water over his head. The Jesuits Christophe Regnault and Paul Regnault provided the 2 accounts of the deaths of Jean de Brébeuf and Gabriel Lalemant. According to Regnault, the Jesuits learned of the tortures and deaths from Huron refugee witnesses who had escaped from St. Ignace. Regnault went to see the bodies to verify the accounts, and his superior Regnault's account was based on his report. The main accounts of Brébeuf's death come from the Jesuit relations. Jesuit accounts of his torture emphasize his stoic nature and acceptance, claiming that he suffered silently without complaining. Potential martyrdom was a central component of the Jesuit missionary identity. Missionaries going to Canada knew they were at risk from harsh conditions, as well as from confronting alien cultures. They expected to die in the name of God. They believed the missionary life and its risks was a chance to save converts and be saved. Relics, beatification and canonization. Father Brébeuf and Lalemant were recovered and buried together in a Sainte Marie cemetery. However, Brébeuf's relics became important objects within Catholic New France. Historian Alan Greer notes that his death seemed to fit the profile of a perfect martyr's end, and were preceded by what were considered religious signs pointing to correspondences with the Passion of Christ, which added to the significance of Brébeuf. On the 21st of March 1649, Jesuit inspectors found the bodies of Brébeuf and Lalemant. In the late spring of 1649, Christophe Regnault prepared the skeletal remains of Brébeuf and Lalemant for transportation to Quebec for safekeeping. Regnault boiled away the remaining flesh and reburied it in the mission church, scraped the bones and dried them in an oven. Wrapped each relic in separate silk, deposited them in 2 small chests, and sent them to Quebec. Brébeuf's family later donated his skull in a silver reliquary to the Catholic Church orders in Quebec. It was held by the nuns of the Quebec Hotel Dieu and the Ursuline Convent from 1650 until 1925, when the relics were moved to the Quebec Seminary for a ceremony to celebrate Brébeuf's beatification. According to Catholic belief, these relics provide physical access to the influence of the saint of whom they are a part. In 1652, Paul Ragueneau went through the relations and pulled out material relating to the martyrs of New France. He formalized this material in a document, to be used as the foundation of canonization proceedings, entitled Memoires touchant la mort et les vertus, or the manuscript of 1652. The religious communities in New France considered the Jesuit martyrs as imitators of previous saints in the Catholic Church. In this sense, Brébeuf in particular, and others like him, reinforced the notion that Canada was a land of saints. Catherine de St. Augustin said that Brébeuf appeared to her in a vision at the Quebec Hotel Dieu while she was in a state of mystical ecstasy, and he acted as her spiritual advisor. According to one account, Catherine de St. Augustin ground up part of Brébeuf's relic bone and gave it in a drink to a heretical and mortally ill man. It is said that the man was cured of his disease. In another instance, in 1660–61, a possessed woman was exorcised by the aid of one of Brébeuf's ribs, again while under the care of Catherine de St. Augustin. The exact circumstances of this event are disputed. Brébeuf's relics were also used by nuns who were treating wounded Huguenot soldiers, and they reported that his assistants helped rescue these patients from heresy. Jean de Brébeuf was canonized by Pope Pius XI on the 29th of June 1930, and proclaimed one of the patron saints of Canada by Pope Pius XII on the 16th of October 1940. A contemporary newspaper account of the canonization declares, Brébeuf, the Ajax of the mission, stands out among them because of his giant frame, a man of noble birth, of vigorous passions tamed by religion, describing both the man and his defining drive according to formal terms of hagiography. Modern era. It is said that the modern name of the native North American sport of lacrosse was first coined by Brébeuf, who thought that the sticks used in the game reminded him of a bishop's crozier. He is buried in the Church of St. Joseph at the reconstructed Jesuit mission of St. Marie among the Hurons across Highway 12 from the Martyrs' Shrine Catholic Church near Midland, Ontario. A plaque near the grave of Jean de Brébeuf and Gabriel Lalemant was unearthed during excavations at Sainte Marie in 1954. The letters read, P. Jean de Brébeuf, brûlé par les Iroquois, le 17 de mars LAN, 1649. In September 1984, Pope John Paul II prayed over Brébeuf's skull before saying an outdoor mass on the grounds of the Martyrs' Shrine. Thousands of people came to hear him speak from a platform built especially for the day. Many Jesuit schools are named after him, such as Collège Jean de Brébeuf in Montreal, Brébeuf College School in Toronto, and Brébeuf Jesuit Preparatory School in Indianapolis, Indiana. St. John Brébeuf Regional Secondary School in Abbotsford, British Columbia, Canada, and St. Jean de Brébeuf Catholic High School in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada are also named in his honor. There is a high school, St. Jean de Brébeuf Catholic High School in Vaughan, Ontario, Canada. There is also Église Street Jean de Brébeuf in Sudbury, Ontario. There is also an elementary school in Brampton, Ontario, Canada named after him, called Street Jean Brébeuf Roman Catholic Elementary School, as well as one in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada called Street John Brébeuf Catholic School, which is part of the St. John Brébeuf Catholic Parish. Also one French elementary school in Gatineau, Quebec, called École Jean de Brébeuf. Also included is St. Jean Brébeuf Junior High School, located in Calgary, Alberta. The school closest to his burial site in Midland is St. Jean de Brébeuf Catholic Elementary School in Bradford, Ontario. There is also a unit at Camp de Sonk in the Shawnee National Forest named after Jean de Brébeuf. The Catholic camp is named for all of the North American martyrs and those who helped them. The parish municipality of Brébeuf, Quebec is named after him, as is Rue de Brébeuf on the Plateau Mont-Royal in Montreal. The character of Christophe in the Orenda, a 2013 novel by Joseph Boyden, is said to be based on Jean de Brébeuf. The novel won the 2014 Canada Reads competition.